In light of recent events, tough choices have been made, and Patrick has decided to step away from the partnership and the Wait, What Was I Doing podcast. What this means for you, the listeners, moving forward is that you will not hear about the soft, luxurious hair anymore, as Shoost has far less of it on his head. However, because the dynamic of three people has worked very well for this podcast, we have decided to bring our business manager, who has been with us through the thick and thin of it anyway, into the fold to see how things go. So, watch out, because this could be a dead meerkat walking. I'm not sure, but we're watching you. Who the fuck are you?
I'm Shoost, Lee's asshole, and
That's
business
right.
manager.
And executive producer.
And executive producer. Also a lawyer.
But I'm drunk right now.
Your law firm is amazing.
So what brings you into the trash can?
Well, you guys.
Oh, well.
You asked me, so.
And why did you accept?
Impulsivity?
That tracks. ADHD, ASD, or both?
Why not both?
Why not both? A lot of the listeners have probably noticed the change in the subtitles of the podcast.
Yep.
We are still the Wait, What Was I Doing podcast. We're just now three meerkats in a trash can's mental health podcast, as opposed to being a squirrel, an ape, and a trash panda's ADHD or mental health podcast, or depending on when you listened, depends on what the name was. It seems like every season we're going to change that subtitle anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, like, the main reason I did come on was, I know you guys very well, and we've hung out a lot, and we have some great banters back and forth when, we aren't recording, so figured...
Why not press record and see what happens? What's the worst that can happen?
Anyway, other than being my asshole, what qualifies you to talk on a podcast?
Well, I have a mic.
That's a good reason. Fucking
In
hire.
2022, that's all you need.
Yeah.
Ain't that the fucking truth?
I have a microphone and vocal cords. Hire me.
How do you think I got here?
It's true.
Oh, I help with a lot of, like, the video editing on a lot of, like, not only the podcast now, but on Tyler's side as well. And, even before I came on, I helped with figuring out episodes and helping laying them out. And, Lee was always bouncing stuff off me, so...
I would never. I gently lob, thank you.
You're drunk. You don't do anything gently right now. Your name is not Gently. You may be non-binary, but you are not gently. Abruptly, yes. All right. Anyway, so you have a microphone and vocal cords. Congratulations, you're hired.
Yay!
Yay!
No, and yeah, like I said, I help out a lot with a lot of the editing stuff and structuring and figuring out topics and things like that in the past. So, at least in my mind, it made logical sense for me to come and fill the spot that opened up, because I was basically doing that without being on the podcast anyhow.
Great, awesome. So now you're here, fantastic, whatever. This is the Wait, What Was I Doing? 3 meerkats in a trash can's mental health podcast. Season 3, episode 1. Let's do it. Jazz hands.
Jazz hands.
All right, so this is a topic that I've wanted to personally cover for a while now. And I'm super excited that we finally get the chance to do this. And that's talking about the way that mental health is portrayed in media. We all know that media likes to blow things out of proportion. It likes to, media is there for entertainment, right? So it's going to try to entertain the masses. The problem is when we're dealing with topics like mental health, we're taking a very real life, very serious thing for many people and altering it so that people can laugh at it, or so that people end up with these ideas about what mental health is and is not. And it's a problem.
It is. There are many times where they will take something like, schizophrenia or chronic depression or autism or whatever, and they will...
OCD is another really big one.
OCD is a big one too, yeah. They will Hollywoodize it. They will glamorize it. They will... all they're really doing is further playing into the stigma. And it's... a lot of these shows very, very few of them ever get anything really correct, right? A lot of it is broad stroked. A lot of it is very generalized so that people can relate to the characters more, I think. I do that too.
I think that's why they do it. I think it's definitely done for a relatability, if not for blowing something out of proportion to make it more entertaining. So I think it is one side of the spectrum or the other. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, like the good, the bad, and the ugly about mental health in media and stuff like that. We have examples. But what examples can you think of, like right now off the top of your head? Whether it be a good representation of mental health in media or a bad representation.
Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory.
Of course you picked that one, because I also picked that one.
Of course I did,
the second one.
All right, good. I'm glad you did.
Because I had a feeling.
Excellent.
But it's along that same lines. It is The Good Doctor. Mm-hmm. It's an extreme case of autism.
Yep. And I hear that one quite often.
I was going to say just about any bad guy in Criminal Minds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blown way out of proportion or misrepresented.
Yeah, it's so much easier to say that the bad guy had, mental problems. The bad guy had mental issues. He struggled with mental health.
The big ones are schizophrenia and like the multiple personalities. That's the ones where they get super blown out of proportion. Like the wife watches that all the time. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, it's a good show entertainment-wise, but when it comes to the mental health aspects, things get so blown out of proportion that you can't take anything good away from it.
Mm-hmm.
At least not educationally.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I don't have schizophrenia. I don't personally know anybody in my real life that has schizophrenia. I have been in psych rotations, and I have dealt with people who have schizophrenia, but in extreme cases, these are people who are in a hospital because of their schizophrenia. And even when we take a look at shows like Criminal Minds that deal with schizophrenia, right, we see a completely different representation of what schizophrenia is than what the literature says schizophrenia is. For instance, schizophrenia is always painted as people being violent or unable to control anger. And in all actuality, the number of people who are a danger to somebody else when they have schizophrenia is minimal. Mm-hmm. More often than not, if any violence is portrayed, it's going to be portrayed towards self. And even that doesn't happen at the rate that we see in the media.
Yeah.
I have not seen The Good Doctor, though.
I haven't either, although I do see a lot of like the little clips that people put up on TikTok where they have like the, what do you call it, the feel-good videos, like where they're cutting like cake and in perfect slices type idea, right?
Oh, the ASMR, like kind of...
yeah, like the visual ASMR.
Yep.
It's not auditory because they have the like show clip going on, but they have like the visual. And yeah, and I get those all the time, and it's always these extreme cases. Like the one that's stood out in my mind really big is a clip where the Good Doctor, I can't remember his name, so I'm going to just refer to him as the Good Doctor. But he is treating a little AFAB child who's probably right around 10 or so, and the child identifies as male. And he says that, well, no, you're female because you have a vagina. Like, there's only two gender type thing. And then there's other doctors that come in and have to try to reason with him, like, no, like... But that was the big one. Like, it was that whole... extreme case of the black and white thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've seen some clips like that where, yeah, it's he's unable to be swayed about just about anything. The other thing that I notice in those is the extreme aversion to any form of eye contact. Mm. Like, he will not look anybody in the face. Now, I'm not saying that people who are autistic don't go through that struggle, that they don't, especially the higher you get with higher needs and stuff like that, it becomes more commonplace to kind of avoid eye contact. But all three of us here are autistic. And while it might make us uncomfortable, none of us have problems with eye contact. So I think that shows another example of exaggerating the symptom for the sake of bringing it to...
Another trait that I see, and I see it with both the Good Doctor and Sheldon Cooper in Big Bang Theory, is the photographic memory. Like all these autistics are super smart, and it's that whole Asperger supremacy type portrayal that is brought across, and again, that's massively problematic.
Very much so.
Look at all of us here. We all have terrible times with our memories. And yes, it's partially because of the ADHD, but it's still, even without the ADHD, we wouldn't have memories like that.
No.
Well, no, even with the ADHD, you see instances of people with autism being more likely to have ADHD than, say, somebody who's suffering with depression who may have ADHD. Or the likelihood of them having ADHD is lesser than somebody who's autistic.
Yeah. I just kind of wanted to step back about the eye contact thing. For me, it's very circumstantial. It depends on what circumstance I'm in. Yeah, who I'm there with. Like with my psychiatrist, I have a hell of a time. A hard time. And it very well could be that he's very invalidating of me. So maybe it's I can't bring myself to do it. Like I've noticed in the past if there is somebody that I really don't like, or if somebody that I'm really pissed off at, I will not make eye contact with them. I will avidly avoid it. I will go out of my way to avoid it.
One thing that I want to add to that, though, right, or one question I want to ask about that, right, is... do you ever find yourself, when you're in a situation where you have to make eye contact with somebody and maybe you don't want to, maybe you're uncomfortable with it, that you make eye contact by looking past them?
Oh, yeah, I've got
or
fakes.
Or looking at their forehead or the tip of their nose or something like that?
I'll look at the bridge of their nose. I'll look at one of their eyebrows. I will look past them. Yeah, that kind of stuff. I've got hacks all over the place for that.
Again, that's circumstantial too, because when I go to visit Tyler, I have no problem looking him in the eye, directly in the eye when we're talking to each other, because we're so comfortable with each other, right?
Yeah.
But yes, in general, if I'm out in public and have to look at the teller type thing when I'm paying for my groceries, then yeah, I'll be using one of those hacks, or just be looking down at the debit machine type thing when I'm talking back to them, because that's just how I am.
Yeah, I caught myself when I dropped off Jasa at her new piano vocal class. It was her first class, and I went in there and I met her instructor, and super nice lady. I could not make eye contact with her. I could very briefly, as my eyes were darting around the room kind of thing. And every now and again I would catch them. But other than that, I couldn't do it. And I just, it's not that I was trying not to. I think in that moment, I was more tracking myself just to see how I was in that situation. I don't know if it was just I took a step back from myself kind of thing. I did have one decent example of mental health in media, and that is Gustavo Fring from Breaking Bad. Yeah, have you guys seen Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul? No,
I've seen the first episode. That's it.
It didn't hook me.
Yeah,
I've been meaning to. It's just I have so many other shows.
Oh, of course,
you know how impulsivity is.
Oh yeah, bit of a slow burn on that one, but honestly, between those two shows, his portrayal of having OCD without anybody ever saying that he has OCD, his portrayal of it in his character is pretty remarkable and pretty on the money from everything that I know about OCD. Now, admittedly, that's not very much. Once I kind of put together that seemed like very OCD type of behavior, I did a little bit of a dive on Dr. Google, and there are a lot of people that also kind of confirm that. And I don't remember if it was an article I read or a video I saw, but I think Vince Gilligan, the creator of the show, did confirm that he wrote him with having OCD tendencies in mind. Now, a lot of things he will do is, just little perfect lining up of silverware, making sure that, his jacket is perfectly folded and hung up, and just all sorts of just these little things. As you watch the show, you are seeing these kind of OCD behaviors. It's very interesting, and I think it was very well done.
My only issue with that is that those behaviors that you just mentioned are like the very common behaviors that are actually misrepresented as being OCD.
I was just using them as examples.
With OCD being as misrepresented as it tends to be, it's those things like things lining things up in a very nice, neat row or folding something up in a very particular way that can also feed into that this is what OCD is without talking about the compulsion that leads to the obsessive or the action, right? Yeah. So for me, because I have OCD, for me, it will manifest. First of all, if you look at my house is a fucking disaster area at all times, right? Or just something is always a fucking mess. Nothing is ever nice, neat, and in order, lined up the way that you see it in media. But for me, I'll wash a dish 7 times. And the compulsion that leads me to wash that dish 7 times is that I'm convinced that there's food particles that are left on there that I didn't get, even if I can't see them. And that if those particles get left on the plate, that it will turn bad and it can lead to me poisoning somebody, and then I will be the cause of somebody's death. So I will wash that dish 7 times.
That actually reminds me of what I think might be a good portrayal of OCD at.
Because mine sucks.
No, listen.
It does, okay? Is that what you want to hear?
Fine, fuck.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
But what it made me think of was there's a doctor on the TV show Scrubs. What's the actor's name?
Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know why I couldn't think of that.
Deuce from Edmonton.
I thought I was the one who wasn't supposed to be remembering stuff.
It was right there. Like I said, just because we have autism doesn't mean we have great memories.
I'm sorry. Some of my alcohol brain must be leaking to my asshole.
Well, as long as your asshole's not leaking.
So that's what you meant by when you said that it'd go through your system quickly. Gotcha.
But he played a surgeon who has OCD. And it like throughout the whole thing, they showed him as very like methodical, and he had these where he had to step through a door the proper way, like with the right foot instead of the left type thing. And
if you step through with the left, something's gonna happen.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
Other than those types of things, they showed him in a good light up until the very end of the episode, where JD, the main character, finds him because he thinks, oh, this doctor's like fucking amazing, and like I want to be more like him. And then he finds him after surgery with all the lights out in the hospital, and the surgeon's still washing his hands like hours after. And Michael J. Fox's character just all of a sudden has a meltdown because he's like, I washed my hands 100 times, but I didn't do it the right way, so I have to do it again. And he's like, it's so frustrating. And he also is not able to go to the washroom at the hospital. He has to drive to his house to go to the washroom, and things like that, where he has no control. It's a compulsive need to do this one thing the right way. If he gets one tiny little thing wrong, he has to restart that whole process. He said, my hands are so dried and cracked and bleeding.
Yes. At the beginning of the pandemic, I had to have intensive therapy, where I was seeing my therapist every day. I could not be admitted into a hospital because I was the only caretaker that we had for my children, and I wasn't a threat to myself or anybody else. But at the beginning of the pandemic, my OCD kind of really grabbed hold of me, and I know that, yes. So I was constantly washing my hands to the point where they were dried, they were cracked, they would bleed. I was washing them in upwards of 30 times in an hour and a half, because something would go wrong, or I wouldn't have done a step the right way. And if I didn't do the step the right way, then I was going to infect my children, and I was going to cause one of them to die. A lot of my compulsions revolve around death.
No shit.
I am concerned that I will be the cause of somebody's death. But I was washing my hands to the point where I was washing the skin off of my hands. So yeah, there's definitely negative sides, but there's also those good sides where like I can pay attention to detail to some things. Just so I think that's a very good example. I know who I forgot what his name was in the show, but it's been so long since I've seen Scrubs. It's a good example. But now that we have a little bit more clarity on some of the examples that we can think of in media, whether they be good or bad examples, let's take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to start talking a little bit more about why mental health in the media is so fucking important and both the good and the harm that it can end up doing.
Lee is our very own trash panda, and they can be found dropping their marbles, playing Call of Duty, or just hosting a Pomodoro work session on a few different social media platforms. They also enjoy having debates against anti-neurodivergence assholes, where they slap down the facts with research to back it up. Find all their social links at beacons.ai/Lee2460 or beacons.ai/wait what was I doing.
Welcome to another episode of Nobody Asked, the segment where we give you information that nobody asked for.
Some lions mate over 50 times a day, proving that rhinos aren't the only horny animal.
This has been Nobody Asked.
Monday blues got you down, exhausted from late night doom scrolling? Or did you have a case of the zombies from falling down that rabbit hole? Try Subtlety, the all-new energy drink from Squirrel Co., a subsidiary of ADHD Incorporated. With Subtlety, you will never have to hide your sassy attitude behind a mask. Drink Subtlety, and you can just say what's on your mind.
Before I drank Subtlety, I was concerned about being rude to people because of my exhaustion. But now, I can tell my coworkers where they can shove that email.
Subtlety has been a lifesaver. I used to keep my thoughts to myself, but now I can just say whatever is on my mind. Shut the fuck up, Karen!
Subtlety. When life demands you be less subtle. Warning. Drinking Subtlety may cause you digestive upset, jittery hands, nausea, or vomiting. It may also cause you to lose your job, which neither Squirrel Co. nor ADHD Incorporated can be held responsible for. Drink Subtlety with caution.
I'm going to say a word, and I want you to sit in this word for a second. I want you to think about how this word makes you feel. Are you ready for the word?
I'm ready.
Stigma. Not to be confused with stigmata.
Oh, that's where my mind went.
It's just stigma.
Like, what does bleeding hands have to do with mental health?
Well, OCD.
Uh-huh.
We've covered that.
Uh-huh.
Can confirm.
Uh-huh.
My hands have bled for my mental health. Thank you.
There you go.
When we think about stigma, we have a tendency to think about social stigma, the official definition of which is the disapproval or discrimination against a person based on their characteristics such as gender, culture, race, age, intelligence, and health. Media plays a big part in how people view all of these things. Media tells us that something is good or bad. Considering the news cycle is also a part of media, media can tell us how to think when it comes down to politically, which can include how we think about things having to do with a certain race or a culture, whether we are more forgiving or more strict about something. And media really does a good job of shaping the minds of the people who watch it, especially those who have impressionable minds, like the youth. If media has the ability to cultivate the way that we see the world around us, it's safe to assume that media also plays a part in our self-stigma, otherwise known in some circles as internalized ableism.
I can't imagine that.
This is the process in which a person will view whatever the social stigma is. In this case, we're talking about mental health, and its perceived public stigma, internalize it, and then apply it to themselves. I have OCD. OCD in media is represented as being a perfectionist. Since I am not a perfectionist, I ergo do not have OCD, but I have a clinical diagnosis. Well, they're all wrong, and I'm going to fight myself about it. on a daily fucking basis.
I don't know what you mean. I don't do that on a daily basis with my self-diagnosed autism at all.
No, I have no idea. No, it's true. I 100% agree with you. I do not understand what this term is that you speak of. Internalized ableism.
Okay, so let's then take a look at the way that media portrays somebody who is Muslim. How that has shaped the minds and the thought process of so many people and has created issues where Muslim people are ostracized or attacked because culturally they're seen as bad. When this isn't the case, it's just the way that the media portrays it. Shows that depict Middle Eastern conflict or how everybody in the Middle East hates America, for those of us living in the good USA.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that because somebody is Muslim, they're inherently after our freedoms. Media portrayed that.
Or where a Middle Eastern actor or somebody who appears to be Middle Eastern gets cast in a role in a TV show as either a cabbie or a convenience store clerk or a terrorist bomber.
Right?
I mean, we also have, the pandemic led to a rise in Asian hate. And we saw Asian hate crimes rise. Why? Because the president of the United States at the time, I didn't vote for him, but somehow he got there, ended up calling it the Kung Flu. And blamed China.
The China virus.
Or the China virus, right. And blamed China for everything. And this led his believers to start acting out in violence against people who were Asian. Didn't matter if they were Chinese or not. If you looked Asian, there was a perceived threat there. And media played a part in that. That created social stigma. Now imagine being one of those communities and listening to this rhetoric being thrown at you the entire time. How do you start to internalize it and apply it to yourself? Do you start sitting in self-hatred? Do you maybe start believing some of the things that are being said about you?
In our community, you see it constantly, the amount of people with the internalized ableism on full display, right? Oh, I'm just being a little lazy. Oh, I'm this. Oh, I'm that. I see it numerous times in a day. I'm not going to name names, but I mean, there are some people where you can tell that self-stigma is so deeply rooted that it is damn near impossible for them to get out of that mindset.
And it doesn't matter how much you battle that. It, like you said, it's so deeply rooted that you can pull the shit out that's at the surface, but that shit's just going to pop up a couple hours later because it's that deeply rooted.
So all of this leads into another term I'm going to throw at you here, Spaz, and I know that I didn't provide a dictionary for you to look up these terms, but I did provide you with the actual definition right there. And this is cultivation theory. Those that spend more time living in a virtual world may have a distorted view of what the real world is like. They will take what they see in media as reality. So now we see...
so it's bad enough you won't give me a dictionary, now you're just gonna fucking straight up assault me. Alright, I get it.
You signed up for this fucking podcast. You knew what you were getting yourself into. You don't get to complain. If anybody in this room gets to complain, it's Shoost, and I don't see him fucking complaining.
Yet.
I give it time.
Out loud.
You have the internalized...
Internalized complaining.
Internalized bitch session.
So essentially, cultivation theory is taking everything having to do with stigma and saying media and how media portrays things will, in turn, determine how society views things as a society that is so heavily involved in media, whether it be in TV or my kids love YouTube, right?
Mine too.
Streams, anything like that. And we see that algorithms are growing to create echo chambers. So if you're on TikTok, for instance, right, and you are liberal trash like myself, right, you are going to be shown a lot more liberal leading information, a lot more liberal-leaning content creators. If you have not found the keys to the LGBTQIA kingdom, be liberal. That's how you fucking get there. That is step one. Then you can join the gays and days, okay?
You see, I wish I was that lucky, because for the most part, on my feed, creator-wise, I see a whole bunch of the left-leaning folk that I enjoy their stuff, and I side with a lot of their thought process. However, every one of the lives that I was seeing over I think it was all of last week, is all a bunch of fucking, up here, it's a bunch of the convoy idiots. So a bunch of the convoy rallies.
I don't really count the lives in with that algorithm so much, because a lot of the ones that I get are like the abortion is murder, God isn't real, and Trump lost stuff, coupled with the, a woman's right to choose. Like it's I get both sides, but I get them in very definitive stances. At least a lot of the content creators that I do end up following, and a lot of the liberal trash like myself, right? We may have very strong views about something, but we'll also take into account other people's views. And those content creators like that, right, inundate my fucking feed all of the time, sprinkled with a healthy dose of lesbian thirst traps, because it's me.
Well,
anyway.
Because obviously.
You got it. And I observe those with the utmost respect, for view time. Anyway.
Make sure I watch it 4 times just to be safe. Right.
Just to be safe.
Over and over. I want to make sure that they get boosted.
I'm just helping out the content creators. I don't know what you're talking about. But the algorithms create these echo chambers. So if you're liberal trash, you're going to end up with liberal trash stuff. If you're a fucking Hatriot, you're going to end up with Hatriot stuff. If you're a fucking member of Al-Qaeda, you're going to get a bunch of Al-Qaeda stuff. If you're a fucking right-leaning individual, you're going to get a bunch of right-leaning stuff. If you're a conspiracy theorist, you're going to end up with a lot of conspiracy theorists. And you get stuck in these wind tunnels that just say, you are right. And we're not going to challenge that. When in all actuality, challenging it is kind of what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, but God forbid you make somebody think.
I love thinking when I'm not drunk.
I do too, but I mean, how are they going to keep you on board, keep you viewing, keep you trapped in the app if they're making you think instead of just catering to your own personal echo chamber?
Well, and you see the same thing even within the mental health community. I mean, you see all these people with the 5-finger challenges and shit like that.
Oh, yeah.
That they don't challenge you to go and, do your own research and all that kind of stuff. I mean, how many videos have you done, Tyler, where you've battled that kind of shit?
Oh,
Or you end up with the content creators to say, I'm the only one talking about this information. I'm looking at you, Dr. Aman.
Speaking of Dr. Aman, actually, any of the mouthpieces who follow his bullshit and just regurgitate that same shit over and over and over, right? And there's one video that I've got in my drafts that I've been working on for a few days, and the woman in it says, doctors aren't, all-knowing, all-powerful, all-seeing, which, yes, I'll agree with. There are some that they're not, top-notch in their field, and that's fine. However, when she says something like, just make sure to ask questions and do your own research, in one breath, I agree with that. On the other hand, make sure you know where you're getting that research from. If you're looking up fucking ass clowns from Dr. Aman's personal supplement line saying that, a run around the block, some fucking twig berries, and a thing of carrot juice is going to cure you, yeah, that's garbage. You need to be looking for better information than that.
And when it comes to certain mental health disorders, right, we start getting into social learning theory, which is just a little bit different than the cultivation theory. Cultivation says television and media is what's going to create a society that believes something in one way, that they have a very heavy sway on how things are viewed. Whereas social learning theory sits there and says, if you have somebody with a mental health condition in your real life that you can draw personal experience from interactions with, that is what will determine your particular view about how that mental health condition is. Such as, I am autistic and ADHD. My husband will not lean on media and cultivation theory to determine exactly how somebody with autism and ADHD is affected, but because I'm in his life, he will learn through me and personal experience and interaction with me. So in the absence of a person with XYZ mental health condition, right, people are going to end up relying on media and cultivation theory to determine exactly what it is or how they're supposed to view somebody who has a mental health condition. Alternatively, if you have somebody with a mental health condition or a reliable connection with somebody who has a mental health condition, or any other number of things, whether it be culturally or religiously, but for the sake of, being in the trash can today and talking about mental health, we're going with the mental health aspect, you're going to draw more reliable information from your interactions with that person.
Yeah, and that in and of itself, though, too, can also be a double-edged sword, because when you have things like ADHD and or autism, both of which being spectrums, and everybody who has that is going to present differently. So with your husband relying on you as his primary example of how autism is, yes, it's going to rely on his experience with you, which is, a good standpoint. However, there is also the potential for getting pigeonholed into the thought process of, this is how it is, and you don't look like my wife. My wife is autistic, but you don't act like they do. So, you can't be autistic.
Absolutely. And I think that goes a lot to say that we need to make sure that we're balancing our worldview with reliable information. And if you need reliable information, reaching out to and you can't find any, reach out to people who can,
Embrace-autism.com. This plug has been brought to you by Trash Panda brand pretzels.
They go so great with my drink. Mommy's special juice.
Well, since that was a terrible commercial plug, I think it's time we move on to a message from our sponsor before we get on to the next section. I thought it was pretty great, actually. I think that's 2 points for each of us there.
Mommy's special juice. We'll be back after I've consumed Mommy's special juice.
Glug, glug, bitches.
I can think of worse plugs.
We interrupt this broadcast to inform you of an outbreak. Canine Parvovirus 69, also known as the Schuster-McGee Parvo, has reached the podcast studio car, located north of Town Square. Symptoms include irrepressible sarcasm, bad knees, and a low tolerance for noise. Some have also reported smelling Taco Bell, growing a beard, and stealing cookies. Known spreader sites include the Wait What Was I Doing podcast and the Squirrel Station Discord. If you or someone you tolerate has been exposed, please email guarddog@assholesareus.com or go to beacons.ai/Wait What Was I Doing to fill out a complaint form.
We interrupt this podcast to bring you this breaking news story. I'm your on-location reporter, Falsey News. As more and more cases of canine parvovirus 69, more commonly known as Schuster-McGee parvo, are detected within the Squirrel Station, Chief Boyardee continues to enforce mandatory anti-SAS tablets throughout the community. Though, in true neurodivergent fashion, no one is taking them, reportedly because they have been told to. According to staff and management, this comes as a surprise to no one. We will keep you up to date with this story and more, tonight at 11:30, only on Channel 80, in HD.
In the criminal justice system, squirrel-based offenses are considered especially heinous. In the Squirrel Station, the dedicated detectives who investigate these vicious felonies are members of an elite squad known as the Special Squirrel Unit. These are their stories.
After coming to an agreement with the Cult of 13, Sergeant Chris enjoys some well-earned time off. Meanwhile, Danny and Desi investigate a local fair, only to be met by an emotional support dragon. Tune in for a brand new episode of Squirrel Squad 6, Tuesday nights at 9, only on Channel 80 in HD.
So getting us started in this little jaunt down the good, the meh, and the ugly, which, by the way, is also a movie reference for those of you that know. Congratulations, you're fucking old. We're going to go ahead and start with Split. Now, this is one of, we have watched several movies together. Split was one of the ones that we didn't get a chance to watch together, but we've all seen this one, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have not, but the wife has, and I've seen a lot on it, so.
Fantastic. So, Spaz is the only other person who has actually seen the movie. I guess I'll ask you.
Okay.
I guess we could pull the panda in and ask her, but that's asking too much. Would you label Split as the good, the meh, or the ugly?
I would actually classify that one as the ugly.
It's so ugly.
Oh yeah, like in and of itself, it was okay as a movie, but keeping in mind that it was put together by M. Night Shyamalan as part of a trilogy of superheroes, the portrayal was just was not on. You know, I get the Hollywood desire to have this bad character with 24 personalities, one of
it was
which
some high number, yes.
Yeah, 23 or 24. You know, you get to know a couple of the personalities throughout the movie, and don't ask me to name them, and it's been far too long. But, you know, the desire to have one of them be this horrible, evil villain character, the Beast, right?
It's not even just one of them. All of them go along with it.
Oh, yeah, all of them go along with it, yeah. But, I mean, like, some of the characters, you know, they're portrayed as nice people.
Yeah, like the motherly figure.
The teenage
one.
Then you have the kid.
Yeah, the kid.
And then you have the one who also shows the Hollywood version of OCD. Things have to be neat all the fucking time and clean, and how dare you make something dirty, and it's not OCD, people. But anyway, yeah, so this movie did a really shit job of showing a mental illness that I know several people with. And they're all fantastic individuals. That being, I almost went into like just disassociation. And like, that was it. Hold on, let me take a sip of mommy's special juice.
And scene.
Yeah. All right, that's a good episode, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
That's right.
So Split does such a horrible job of representing dissociative identity disorder that the International Society for the Study of Trauma and Disassociation actually put out a statement. In this statement, they said, with respect to Mr. Shyamalan's ability to write and direct truly frightening movies depicting individuals with this or any mental disorder, does a disservice to his artistic ability and to the over 20% of the population who, at some point or another, struggle with some form of mental illness. It acts to further marginalize those who are already struggling on a daily basis with the weight of stigma. And I don't think that I could have possibly said that any better than they did, whether I am inebriated or
Okay, that's gonna stay in.
No, that's staying in. Inebriated. All right. Listen, what you do in the privacy of your room is none of our business.
Can we just be very proud of me for getting through that statement without fucking up any of the goddamn words? But but the second my brain had free reign, it was like, hey, we're gonna trip over this.
Yep.
Fuck my life.
I could read fine, but my lips don't want to cooperate when they're on their own.
I completely agree, though. Like, I don't think you could have put that any better.
No.
Like, that is very well put.
Yeah.
So, for people who haven't seen the movie Split is a psychological thriller that depicts an individual, James McAvoy, right? That was who plays as James McAvoy?
Yeah.
As a violent kidnapper with dissociative identity disorder. It is a horrible representation of people with dissociative identity disorder. In the movie, he kidnaps multiple girls, threatens to harm them. There's a point where basically is one of the girls is supposed to be sacrificed or something like that, and like that's the reason that they've kidnapped them or something.
I believe so. Again, it's been a long time since I've seen it.
It's been a while since I've seen it. But it's really fucking problematic because people with dissociative identity disorder struggle on a daily fucking basis. Now, if you don't know what DID is, it was at one point labeled as multiple personality disorder. This is one of the diagnoses in which people will have multiple alters living within a single body. And these are all people. We could go into what causes DID, but that's not the purpose of this. Maybe for a future episode. But we are going to start actually putting down our resources from the podcast on our new website. There will be some resources from this episode that do talk about dissociative identity disorder within the new website for the podcast notes kind of thing, which I just now dropped on Spaz because in my mind I'd already had this conversation with him. I did not. Anyway.
Surprise!
Surprise, motherfucker.
Surprise, motherfucker.
So a 2017 study of about 173 people with dissociative identity disorder showed their involvement with the criminal justice system. And the result was very low. Those with some form of an offense or those that were on probation at the time of the study showed that there was no direct link between their dissociative identity disorder and the ability to predict that they would be criminally violent in any way, or that they would partake in any kind of any kind of crime rather. These crimes weren't all violent in nature either. In fact, less than 3% of people with DID had some involvement with law enforcement over the tracked time in this study. Furthermore, out of that 3% of people, only a handful of them, working out to maybe 2 or 3 of them, actually were in that they were charged with an offense, compared to those that were maybe stopped for a speeding ticket or somebody who was a witness to a crime. So Split did a really shit job of showing DID and what it is. Let's talk about a movie that didn't do as shitty of a job.
Almost like it was meh?
It was meh. It was meh.
I will agree with that.
This is a movie we all watched together.
Yes.
I tried to talk them out of it because I thought that they would get bored with it. It's one of my favorite movies, in all honesty. Black Swan, Natalie Portman, ballet movie. Fantastic if you like dance. If not, you may find it a little bit dry or a little bit boring.
Or it's still a decent movie.
Or it can still be a pretty okay movie.
Maybe I'm just surrounded by people who just didn't like Black Swan.
Maybe.
Who knows? I enjoyed the movie, but Black Swan portrays a psychotic break. A first-time psychotic break. And it does so in a relatively decent manner.
No, I mean, it did a decent job. The only really downside that it showed was violence towards others. There was the one scene in the hospital where it didn't necessarily explain if anything happened to another person or if it was just a hallucination or what. But other than things like that, and Lee, you touched on this previously before we watched it, it shows more the visual hallucinations.
Shows a lot more.
Yeah.
Where it's generally the other way around, where it's a lot more auditory hallucination rather than visual. Not that visual can't happen, but that it's more likely to be auditory.
Exactly. So from a scientific standpoint, a person who's suffering from a first-time psychotic break is more likely to hear some hallucinations as opposed to witnessing them as visual hallucinations. Additionally, this movie pulls her out of her hallucinations very rapidly by something happening in the world around her. This could be somebody calling her name or tapping her on her shoulder, when in all actuality, if you're having a visual hallucination, it is unlikely that you will be pulled as starkly as she is in the movie away from that hallucination just because something in the real world has interfered with it.
Right, so a lot of that would be more Hollywoodization of the experience for the sake of moving the plot along kind of thing, as opposed to exposing the viewer to the reality or, a more realistic experience of the psychotic break.
Now, the reason that we have this movie labeled as meh as opposed to being ugly is because it does accurately portray several things that are very important. It does accurately portray what could lead a person to suffering with a psychotic break. This could be having a parent with mental health issues, as is alluded to, her mother having mental health issues in the movie. Immense outside stress from her new position as prima ballerina in her first major show in that role, and the additional stress coming from her mom with that. This leads to a heavy amount of internalized stress. We also see that she is isolated throughout the movie, where she goes to rehearsal, she comes straight home. She goes to rehearsal, she comes straight home, and that is her life. She's very much revolved around just the people at the company and just her mother, and that is it.
Yeah. And her mother is definitely something in there. Like, when we were watching it, I looked at it a lot from the angle of a parent. And I remember we talked about this as we were watching it, with the mother that is so obsessed with her perfection during her performance. It made me think of a lot of dance moms and those terrible shows like Toddlers and Tiaras. Now, again, shows that are quote unquote reality shows, but you know damn well that a lot of it is scripted. A lot of the drama is hyped up and pumped up for the sake of viewing. I get that. But with my
it's
own...
It's amazing what can happen in editing.
Right? Yeah, it's funny how the... Speaking of which... but with my own daughter being in dance classes for years and years, when she said that she didn't want to dance anymore, I was okay with that. She wants to focus more on singing and piano now and stay in her singing classes. And that's great, because there truly is so much pressure when it comes to a lot of this. Now, her school is really good because they aren't overly pressuring on the kids, because they realize they're kids, right? She was in ballet. She was in theatrical jazz. She was in I can't remember the name of it, but it was more of a freestyle kind of thing. And being forward thinking about it, if she wanted to stay with ballet, that is so heavily structured, and they showed that in the movie, right? It is so heavily structured, and everything just has to be perfect. And I don't think that my kid would be able to handle that, because knowing how that kind of pressure can affect a neurodivergent mind, yeah, a lot can thrive and succeed under that pressure, but the body and the mind can only take so much before you get to that breaking point, as was shown in the movie there, right? Her mother was so obsessed with her being absolutely perfect. Now, I don't know if that was she was living through her daughter.
So it's implied in the movie that she is living her dreams through her
She's
daughter.
She's living vicariously through her daughter, yeah.
She was in a ballet company, but never got beyond being basically one of the lower cast members.
Yeah, I remember that.
So
being
she's living through her daughter being a
yeah.
prima now.
Yeah, but the predatory nature even of that environment too, the gaslighting from her teacher that she had to endure, just to get her more into the part, right? Where he came on to her and, was
the straight up sexual harassment.
Straight up harassment. Straight up, just to coax her to get into that mindset, right? Just fucking terrible. I'm glad my kid decided not to carry on with it, because I don't want to think about her having to go through those kind of pressures and expect to be perfect in the same way that Natalie Portman's character was. Because we sure as hell wouldn't demand that
Definitely
ever.
Not. And then another thing that it correctly portrayed was the age range as well, for that first psychotic break. What'd you say? You have it in
She's in her early to mid 20s in the movie, and that is where, if you're going to have a psychotic break, the most common age range is in your early to mid 20s.
Yeah, so that's another plus in which leads to why it's in the meh category, because there are a lot of points where they do accurately portray some of the facts on psychosis.
Absolutely. So we do know that it kind of drops the ball when it comes down to the visual hallucination aspect, in addition to the violence that's being portrayed in the movie. But we do see that it does accurately represent several other aspects of how devastating an untreated mental illness can be in a person's life, because at no point is she receiving treatment, or is anybody being like, hey, something's wrong, maybe we should seek help or something like that. It's left completely untreated, in an environment that is designed essentially to let this particular kind of mental issue thrive. And they did a very good job of representing that.
Mm-hmm.
The next movie, I think I'm the only one who watched this movie.
I think so, yeah.
Not that we didn't have it set up for our movie night to actually watch, but there were some technical difficulties and some Rule Zero shit that ended up happening that prevented it.
I didn't realize puppies were technical.
That was the Rule Zero shit.
That was the Rule Zero shit, yeah.
Gotcha, all right.
The technical side of thing was technically trying to get us all together to watch the movie at some point. Just fucking roll with it. Anyway.
All right, rolling.
No, if you have never seen this movie, I do recommend watching it. It is a decent movie. So, The Soloist is a movie with Robert Downey Jr. and Jamie Foxx. This is like Robert Downey Jr.'s I think he had just done Iron Man, right? So this is before he was really, really, really big. And he was just a decently known name in Hollywood.
Regardless, he's always been a fantastic actor, in my opinion.
He really has.
He is. He's a great actor.
Jamie Foxx, actually. I love both of them.
So this movie is a relatively accurate representation of a person with schizophrenia. In particular, Mr. Ayers suffers with paranoid schizophrenia. I think what I enjoy the most about this movie is that it showcases mental health from two different aspects. You have Mr. Ayers, who is the paranoid schizophrenic, who is living on the streets, gifted fucking musician who was classically trained at Juilliard until schizophrenia took hold. That age range for it to take place in your early to mid-20s is accurate. And he ended up withdrawing from Juilliard because of the mental health issues he was having. And then you have Mr. Lopez. Mr. Lopez is a writer for the Los Angeles Times, I believe. Anyway, he's a writer in the newspaper. And he has nothing to write about and ends up hearing Mr. Ayers playing a 2-stringed violin.
Now, this is based on a true story.
Yes, this is a true story. Hears him playing a 2-stringed violin and decides he's going to write a whole piece on him. And it's all about their journey and Mr. Lopez trying to help Mr. Ayers. And I keep referring to them as Mr. and Mr. because that is how they prefer to be referred to. Some of the follow-up study stuff that I did included interviews with Mr. Ayers. And Mr. Ayers had always said that he was raised with respect, so everybody was Mr. and Mrs. So he treats Mr. Lopez and calls him Mr. Lopez. And as a sign of respect, Mr. Lopez calls him Mr. Ayers. So it's where we're going here. Anyway, as far as the movie accurately handling mental health conditions, I mean, this one was much more on point. There is an issue in which the mental health aspect of paranoid schizophrenia is used as the entertainment value. It's what makes the story as inspirational as it is, right?
Of course.
However, it does hit the marks of somebody who is a paranoid schizophrenic. As far as the age range, there are a couple of scenes where if you've ever suffered with auditory hallucinations, trigger warning for them, because I had a hard time dealing with some of the scenes because they're very realistic to what some people experience when they're experiencing auditory hallucinations. It is the garbled whisper voice in your ear telling you things. And Jamie Foxx does a fantastic job of displaying exactly how that feels, of getting it across like you feel like you're losing your mind, because we know we aren't supposed to be hearing voices. But it does a fantastic job. Part of the plus side to this was that both Mr. Ayers and Mr. Lopez were present on set to talk about this. So they were definitely giving their own insight into things. Another thing that they nailed perfectly was Mr. Ayers's propensity to start talking delusionally, as if Beethoven was actually present with him and moving off into lines of speech that make absolutely no sense.
That would have been interesting to witness.
And if you go on YouTube, there are several instances of interviews with Mr. Ayers, and it is very disjointing to listen to him. There is one point in the movie where physical violence is displayed, and this is Mr. Ayers attacking Mr. Lopez. The only reason that I give this a buy is because, according to Mr. Lopez, this is an incident that actually did take place. But for the most part, Mr. Ayers is nonviolent. He is verbally abusive if he gets into a particular mood, we'll say. But in general, he's actually a pretty decent guy to be around, if not hard to follow.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I remember you saying that it was like the violent scene was him like shoving.
Yeah, just a shove.
Just a shove, rather not like a violent episode like a lot of the Hollywood movies.
Violent outburst.
Yeah. So just a quick trigger or spoiler alert, I guess for me. I'll explain exactly what this particular incident was. Mr. Ayers finds out what his official diagnosis is because he's working on his sister taking guardianship, so basically being in charge of all of the legal aspects of his living. And when he finds out that he's been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, he flips out. Mr. Lopez had just gotten him into an apartment, not into an apartment, but had gotten him an apartment, even though he doesn't prefer to stay there and stuff. And he starts to really think that this is all a setup, and you kind of believe that this is where the paranoid side of paranoid schizophrenia comes in, right? So he ends up shoving Mr. Lopez up against the wall and starts to believe that Mr. Lopez is going to have him committed. And he ends up covering his mouth when he tries to talk and then pushes him to the door. And in that moment, Mr. Lopez is fucking scared shitless. Mr. Ayers is out of control with everything that's going on, but he doesn't hit him. He threatens him verbally, but like I said, that's not out of the norm for Mr. Ayers. So yeah, there's only one aspect or one moment, and I give it that buy because it's an actual episode that did happen between the two of them.
Yeah, and like I said, it wasn't Hollywoodized per se.
Nobody died. Right, and this is exceptionally important because we're talking about schizophrenia, one of the mental illnesses that is most demonized by the media. And if somebody is going to have a mental illness and have committed murder, right, it's going to be because they're schizophrenic.
Well, and to throw back, like that happens a lot on Criminal Minds. Which is why we use that as a terrible example.
Yeah, exactly.
For mental health media.
I think it was fantastic, though, that both of the actual people that this movie is based on were there to give their 2 cents and their insight, and hopefully, correct any falsities that would have been in, the script that were written in there for the sake of Hollywoodizing and over-dramatizing things.
I think one of the other things that they nailed with this that I didn't mention in the notes is that they went so far, Mr. Lopez and Mr. Ayers were not the only ones that were present for that, but a lot of the actors that you see because a lot of this takes place with the homeless community, right? They're all the actual homeless people around where Lamp actually exists. And the idea was to add authenticity, to show what this is actually like. Why hire somebody who has a roof over their head when we can provide these people with meals while they're on set, provide them money to get the things that they need, and have an accurate representation of their conditions.
And for those that don't know, what is LAMP?
LAMP is the community center in California that Mr. Lopez gets Mr. Ayers to start going to. They provide mental health services to the homeless population, also tries to help them get clean if they need to get clean, or, basically a community center to help those that are homeless. Feeds them, shelters them, but it's a small center and there's far too many homeless individuals. So
yeah, still, for it being small, it sounds like a fantastic cause for the community.
Yeah, this is if you see Mr. Ayers with his instruments, chances are it's not far from LAMP, because all of his instruments that have been donated to him thanks to Mr. Lopez's articles are kept at LAMP in a locked room so that they cannot be stolen. It's part of the deal that Mr. Ayers and Mr. Lopez have set up with each other. Mr. Ayers originally played just the cello. He can now play the violin. He's self-taught the drums, the trumpet. He still plays the cello. There's one or two other instruments that he has taught himself how to play. He's an exceptionally gifted musician. It's unfortunate that mental health plays a part. However, even though this is the good, the meh, and the ugly, this movie is still only going to be labeled as meh, and I'm going to tell you exactly why after these commercial breaks.
Find Spaz the Squirrel Dad on all the social media platforms, talking to the audience about living with ADHD and autism. Go to ADHDeverything.com for links to his TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, and more. You can also find links to ADHD research, a printable version of the ADHD spectrum graph, his copyright-free music, and even specially designed merchandise. Go to ADHDeverything.com or beacons.ai/wait, what was I doing?
Are you ready for Sports Ball? Live from the Neurodome tonight. Get ready for some sports ball action as our reigning Golden Acorn champions, the Mighty Meerkats, defend home turf against the undefeated Dark City Demons and the up-and-coming Cajun Corgis.
We're gonna fuck them up.
Team blindfolds and spicy wieners on special during the self-care first quarter break.
Spicy.
Followed by slam poetry after the game.
Slam that poetry.
Don't miss the Scramble at 5, only on WTTS Sports, Channel 80, in HD. Now that's Sports Ball!
Now that we've gone through the meh, and the ugly, because, you know, we classified the good as still being meh.
Yeah.
Now that we've gone through 5 minutes of Lee going through emergency numbers all over the world in the behind the scenes.
Brought to you by Mommy's Special Juice.
Yeah.
And Hyperfocus. Listen, I know by all accounts when I talked about The Soloist, it sounded like a really good movie. But there is one glaring problem that I personally have when it comes to this movie and other movies that portray mental health for entertainment. My mental health conditions do not exist to be somebody else's entertainment or inspiration. Especially if you do not suffer with a mental illness yourself.
Shit, they're not even mine.
Right, they're not even mine.
I fucking wish.
I do want to add to that, like, not to say that that's incorrect, because you're right, it's not there for our entertainment. However, I don't think you're saying that it shouldn't be in the media at all either.
No, I'm not.
Because that's the exact wrong direction to go with it. What we need to do is portray it in an accurate way that isn't used for entertainment or for the feel-good stories. It's used as education and not entertainment.
Yeah, like, admittedly, a lot of the content that I make on these social media platforms, yes, some of it is comedic. Some of it is looking at my own disorders through a comical lens, trying to, you know, spin it in a way that's more humorous, right? More so perhaps as a coping mechanism. And because a lot of people can look at it that way, right? Oops, I forgot my fucking keys again. Whoopsie, right? It's easy. It's better for me to make a joke about myself. I have always been one that's believed that if you cannot make a joke about yourself, you do not have the right to make a joke about anybody else, obviously. Now, that being said, just because I can make a joke about myself, does that mean that I can use somebody who is, in the case of Mr. Ayers, a schizophrenic, as the butt of a joke? I don't have that right, because I don't know what those struggles are. I don't know what he deals with on a daily basis. I just know what I am being shown from the media.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait a second. I feel like we covered this. You mean to say that your information about a paranoid schizophrenic comes from the cultivation theory?
Why, yes. According to the dictionary here.
The Leaktionary.
The Leaktionary, yeah. Yes. I do mean to say that, because I have no firsthand experience what that is like, obviously, because I don't have that disorder. I don't know anybody personally that does have it, so I don't have anybody through the social learning theory to rely on for that information. So yes, I would have to rely on movies and or the media or what have you, unless of course I was going to go to Dr. Google and do some research on it from a verifiable, reputable source.
I'm sorry, can you say the last part one more time?
No, what I said was a verifiable, reputable source.
Okay, yeah, no, I was just making sure you are absolutely right.
Okay, cool. Wanted to make sure that, I was given the good information as opposed to, trying to sell you a bottle of supplements.
Hey, Spaz.
Yeah.
Hey, Spaz.
Yeah.
Do we constitute as a reliable and verified source?
No.
Fantastic.
For as much as I would like to pretend in my own little fucking warped reality that I absolutely am not. Take everything that I say with a grain of salt, verify it, fact check it, and if I'm wrong, come and tell me.
We are not professionals.
Yes, we do a lot of research from reputable sources, from good websites, but we are just conveying the information that we have found. Please do your research from your own resources.
I'll let you in on a little secret too. I'm the one that does all the research for this podcast, right? And I will start.
I think that's a secret.
Yeah,
that's not the secret. That's not the secret. You're jumping the gun. Impulsive fuck. Anyway, the secret is that I'll start off with a sketchy fucking website, and I'll work my way back until I get the reputable information. That means that you may see on the website that I just told Spaz tonight that he needed to create a section to include all of the resources.
Surprise,
you may see something. Exactly. You may see something coming from Healthline. Guess what? Healthline, you can pay to have stuff put on Healthline. Not the best resource, but you know what is in that resource? Another resource that I'm going to link, which is the actual study that has to do with people who have DID and the likelihood of them ending up in some form of crime-related instance.
So what you're saying is check your source's source?
Yeah, check your source's source. Always check your source's source. You know how they teach you in school?
No.
Don't go to Wikipedia? Bitch, 90% of my papers were done by going to fucking Wikipedia first and looking at the sources there. Go ahead, use Wikipedia, but check your source's source. Some of the stuff for Vice may not sound like it's accurate. Check their fucking sources.
Mm-hmm.
I used to do that too, actually. Like go to a lot of my classmates when I was in college used to go to Wikipedia and use Wikipedia as a source. I never did. I used to go to Wikipedia and go to their sources and work my way backwards to find the good source.
There you go. That's how I got through college. Use Wikipedia and then look at their sources. Don't use Wikipedia. Use Wikipedia as sources.
Yeah.
As sources.
Perfect.
Anyway, moving back onto this, right? Back to the point. I am not saying that mental health should not be represented in media. As Shu said, that would be a huge step back. We want representation, but we want accurate representation. We want representation that showcases that we are more than our mental illness. I do not exist, whether it be for my mental illness or for my physical disabilities. I do not exist to be entertainment or somebody else's inspiration story.
Although tonight you have been pretty entertaining.
That is true.
That was the alcohol. That was not my mental illness nor my disability. Thank you.
My mistake.
I'm sorry. That was mommy's special juice, not alcohol, because I don't drink.
I'm sorry. I went to Wikipedia for that. I didn't check my sources.
Yeah.
God damn you. We just talked about this.
So the reason why The Soloist falls for the meh category for me is because it relies so heavily on the fact that Mr. Ayers has paranoid schizophrenia to be inspirational. And I'm not saying that the movie isn't inspirational, because it's inspirational as fuck. But it can be inspirational without relying on the fact that he has a mental health condition and that just being a part of who he is rather than the driving force behind the story.
Instead of letting his musical talent be the force, it's using the mental illness type idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand it tells a story, right? He left Juilliard because of his mental illness, and that's fine to explain. By all means, explain that the man is mentally ill. Sure. Showcase his delusional thinking from time to time. Showcase that he left Juilliard because of this mental health issue. But do not make that and homelessness the only thing he's got going for him. Because he's a talented musician, and well, it's just... I understand that without those, there's very little story to tell. And this is where we reach a quandary, right? This is where we reach an issue, an impasse. At what point does mental health or somebody's instance, whether it be a physical disability or in this case homelessness, when is it inappropriate to use it? Because The Soloist is about a mentally ill homeless man. And if we can't talk about the fact that he's mentally ill or the fact that he's homeless, what do we have left for the entertainment value?
A guy who dropped out of Juilliard who's playing a 2-string violin. Not the most captivating of stories.
Not the most captivating of stories. So I want to point out that we are sitting here saying that this shouldn't be the norm, that we shouldn't be using mental health or somebody's circumstance or somebody's disability, whether it be physical or otherwise, as a driving force for entertainment and inspiration in Hollywood. We're saying that with the understanding that that means that there are some movies that just cease to be entertaining at that point. And I think that as a society as a whole, we have to take a look at it and be like, are we really okay with using somebody's circumstances to entertain ourselves? Because how does that separate us from watching gladiators fight in the arena in Rome? I don't know if that was a drunk jump.
I was going to say that was a bit of a leap.
Some mental gymnastics for me.
It was. So the idea was that a lot of the people who were gladiators in Rome were there because of circumstance. They were either caught stealing or, did something that maybe they were forced to do. It's the shit happened in Rome. You can get down to the history of it, right? So these were the people who were gladiators, people who very well could have been innocent, forced to fight to the death for the entertainment of others. They were a victim of circumstance, and so too are those of us with something that sets us apart. Does that mean that we exist to be entertainment for somebody who's not going through the same thing? Does that mean that we sit there to be a source of inspiration for somebody who may not suffer in the same way we do?
And we will leave you with this thought as we carry on to our next commercial break, and we wrap this shit show up.
In other words, shut the fuck up, Lee. I got you. I hear you. Okay? Got it.
Good. I didn't want to have to dig up the Leaktionary.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were the one drinking.
Well, I'm glad you said it and I didn't have to. We'll be back after this commercial break.
Did you walk onto a construction site wearing only a thong and got ran over by a bobcat?
Did you attend the local petting zoo and break your tailbone trying to ride the moose?
Hey, fuck you! Did you try to touch Katie's food?
I'm JP Schuster.
And I'm CB Mooster. And we're here to fight for you. Automotive accidents.
Medical malpractice.
Workplace injury.
You live in Arkansas.
Call Schuster and Mooster at 1-800-LOBSTER.
Nothing fishy going on here.
I thought we left the crabs at home. Schuster and Mooster.
Attorneys at law.
My nipples are hard.
I can't feel my toes.
By hiring Schuster & Mooster LLC, you acknowledge that no one should act or refrain from acting based solely upon the legal advice provided by Schuster & Mooster LLC without first seeking much better qualified legal and or professional advice.
Join us this Tuesday and Thursday afternoon at the Library Amphitheater for an encore performance of this season's Diamond Fidget award-winning stage achievement, An Epic Fuck Show, a neurodivergent musical. This masterpiece will leave you starstruck by Pocket's graceful presence, mystified by Poet's masterful delivery, and wondering if you left the stove on or not. Bibliotheque Chaotica and Pocket Ford Productions are proud to present An Epic Fuck Show, a neurodivergent musical. Tickets available for a short time only at the Gallery Outlet. Don't miss out on this masterpiece.
So now that we have discussed mental health in media, I guess I kind of want to ask a question to our listeners, which would be, what is a movie or a show that you have seen that you feel gives either a good or a bad portrayal of mental health?
And while I understand that this is a podcast, so you may be confused as to where to give that answer, keep in mind that we do have an entire section in our Discord labeled for podcast discussions. So, head on over to the Squirrel Station Discord and drop that in podcast discussions. Let us know. We would love to hear from you.
On top of that, if you don't have Discord, you can also email us.
And what's that email?
The email address is hello@waitwhatwasidoing.com.
Waitwhatwasidoing.com?
Yes.
Is this website that I have alluded to all evening?
Yes, it is. We do indeed have our own website. It is waitwhatwasidoing.com, where you can access all of our episodes, as well as the transcripts and the resources, so I was just informed tonight, from our podcast. Wait, what was I doing?
.com.
.com.
Really?
Exactly.
And also, don't forget to check out our Patreon. We are back on board with the Patreon. We are going to be doing some stuff. Lee, what have you got planned for the Patreon?
I'm so glad you asked. Well, I was completely unprepared for this fucking question.
Excellent. I mean, I figured turnabout's fair fucking play.
Amazing. I am here for it anyway. On Patreon, you'd like our podcast, right? That's why you're here for season 3. I'm assuming you like the podcast. And if you're going to Patreon, you want to support us, but we want to support you by letting you listen to the podcast a little earlier than everybody else. So if you want to confuse everybody in Squirrel Station by leaving the answers to the questions we asked you in the podcast discussion, gotta be a patron to do that. And we have 3 fantastic tiers to choose from. I fucking forgot what's in each of these tiers though, so Spaz, take it away.
That's right, Lee. We do have 3 tiers. We have the podcast reporter, where you can support our podcast and get your name on your own downloadable podcast business card, as well as the special thanks at the end of every episode.
That's right, because we value you, the listener, and everything that you do to help support us in what we do. How much is that there, Spaz?
And that one is a measly $3 a month.
$3 a month?
That's right.
Gosh, I just have to not drink Starbucks once.
The next step up is the podcast producer for $5 a month. You will get everything from the podcast reporter tier, as well as behind the scenes content such as bloopers, topical deep dives, which is Lee's specialty.
Which is mine.
As well, you will also get the podcast commercials, exclusive behind the scenes content, and of course the patron shout out at the end of the podcast.
How much is that?
That one is $5 a month.
So just like a Twitch sub?
That's right.
Except we get to keep more of that to help fund the podcast.
That's right. And pay for things like websites.
Fantastic.
And if you're feeling really swanky, you can go all out. And for $10 a month, you can join the podcast co-director tier, where you get everything from the co-producer tier, as well as extra video content and early access to upcoming episodes in video format.
That's right, which I will be cutting and posting to YouTube, and you will get a link on the Patreon if you subscribe to that tier.
That's right.
And of course, as with almost everything Patreon related, the higher the tier, the more benefits. So you're not just getting the wonderful items that Spaz listed for tier 3, but you're getting tier 2 and tier 1 as well.
That's right.
And of course, our undying gratitude for helping us do something that, quite honestly, we love to do.
Absolutely.
It's true.
And we cannot thank you enough for those of you that have joined the Patreon, or those of you who will be joining. You have our undying gratitude. We thank you very much. So until next time, thank you all for listening. We appreciate every one of you. Keep fit, have fun, drink your water, take your meds, be kind to yourself.
Fuck Lee's followers.
Fuck Lee's followers.
No, wait, don't do that without consent.
And we'll see you next time on Only Bush.
And that's where we cut.
Every fucking time I have to do fucking homework, I'm going to put a fucking sticky note on my goddamn computer that says, do not say the first thing that comes to mind, even if you're supposed to, because this is what I get.
Wait, what was I doing? 3 meerkats in a trash can's mental health podcast. Yeah, that's a mouthful. We know. Deal with it. Hosted by Lee Plays Games, Schuster McGee, and ADHD Everything. Executive producer, Schuster McGee. Writing and audio contributions by Cupcake Desi, Chris B, Pocket Quiche, Mad Moose, Schuster McGee, Lee Plays Games, and ADHD Everything. Music by Streambeats, Infraction, Mocha Music, Cold Cinema, and Alexi Action. Recorded on October 2nd, 2022, in the Squirrel Station Discord. Edited by Tyler Bacon at Darkside Studios. Extra special thanks to our patrons, Amanda, Diane, and The Bus. Be sure to join the Patreon at patreon.com/the Wait What Was I Doing podcast, and check out our brand new website at waitwhatwasidoing.com. Until next time, whenever the hell that is going to be.
Cut. 감사합니다. That's Korean for thank you. Also, in case you're wondering,
That pause after, that's Korean.
You just fucking melted my brain when you did that. I'm like, what? Jasa's not here. I'm not listening to her phone. What the hell?
if you ever find yourself in South Korea and need an ambulance, the number is 119, not to be confused with 911. Don't pull a Lee. Thank you. We're not going to give context to that. I'm not giving any fucking context. I will not be answering any questions. Thank you.